Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome to today's session. Hello. I can see lots of comments already. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to today's session of Macmillan Education Time. All right, I can see lots of comments. I'm Romina, work for Macmillan Education. I'll just would like to give you some tips and information before the talk. As you know, today you'll be following the session of Emma Heyderman, English for Our Students' Futures, and I really hope you will enjoy it. Just a couple of information, just a couple of things that are a little bit more technical. So during the talk, Emma will be sharing her presentation with you, and she will be asking questions. But if you have questions, please utilize the YouTube chat. And at the end, we'll make sure to have time and address to all the questions. And also about the certificates, you will find them after today's session on the website mondadorieducation.it/attestati on your profile. So just to give you these couple of things before the session, and I'll happily welcome Emma with us.
Hi, Romina.
Hello, hi Emma. So enjoy, and I'll be here following. Thank you very much.
I'll see you at the end, Romina. Thank you.
See you later. Thank you.
See you later. Hi everybody. It's lovely to see so many of you in the room. I wonder how many of you remember me from the last webinar, or possibly I met some of you in Milan or in Padova. Please do say hello if you've met me, if we've met face to face. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving up this afternoon. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon here in San Sebastian in the north of Spain. What I'd like you to do is find a piece of paper, so something like this. You'll also need a pen and possibly a cup of water, because you might get thirsty as you talk to me. So while you find yourselves a piece of paper, let me tell you just a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me. So I'm Emma Heyderman. I live in the north of Spain, and my passion, what I am in my heart, is I'm a teacher. That's what I do. I teach English. But after that, I also write course books. You can see 2 books behind me. I contributed to these 2 books. I'm also a teacher trainer, and I'm also a consultant. I also work for NILE at Norwich in the UK, giving training sessions to teachers. So that's probably enough about me. Shall we begin? So I can see that Paula's already met me online. Hi, Paula, lovely to see you again. So has everybody got their piece of paper? What I want you to do is take your piece of paper and fold it in half like this. So far, so easy. Once you've done that, I want you to fold your piece of paper in half again. And I want you then to fold your piece of paper in half again, like this. Okay, when you've got your piece of paper like this, I want you to really scrunch it like this, just to make sure that we really mark the folds. So here we go. And what you should have is, how many squares is that? That's right, you should have 8 squares on your piece of paper. Brilliant. So has everybody got a piece of paper with 8 squares? Now, I also told you to find a pen. It can be a pen or a pencil or a color, whatever. What I'm going to ask you to do next is to go to the first square, and we're going to be drawing some emojis or emoticons. In the first square, in square number 1, I want you to draw an emoji to represent afraid. Oh, let's have a look. Oh, I can see you drawing. That's brilliant. Gosh, that's yeah, I like your afraid. That's really good. If you want, you can write afraid underneath it. And this is what I've done. Can you see mine? So that's number 1. Number 2, I want you to draw brave. Maybe that's strong. Let's try brave again. Brave. Okay. So number 2 was brave. I'll show you my brave. Okay. And we're going to go a little bit quicker now. So you're not going to have much time. And when we come off the webinar, you'll be able to finish them off and make them beautiful. Number 3, I want you to draw confused. Number 4, hungry. Hungry. Number 5, I want you to draw nervous. Nervous. Number 6, I want you to draw surprised. Number 7, and this is why I said you might need some water for the seminar or the webinar, I want you to draw thirsty. I drank that too fast, I'm sorry. And number 8, don't worry, I'm well. Number 8, I want you to draw well. Okay, and this is what I prepared before. Can you see my 8 cards? And what I'm going to do now is divide them into 8 cards. Can you see? Off we go. And that's why I asked you to scrunch those folds so they would tear much easier. Here we go. I'm just going to tear them one more time. And I'm done. And now I've got my mood cards. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to choose one of your cards to tell me how you are. So how are you feeling? Can you hold up your mood card? Oh, you're confused? Oh, I'm sorry. Now what I want you to do is to choose one of the cards and hold it up. Try again. You're nervous? Oh, I'm sorry. Don't worry, it's going to be fine today. You don't have to do anything very difficult. Oh, great. Most of you are holding up this card to say that you're well. So we've got our mood cards, and I can now see exactly how you're feeling. So I'm going to start sharing the screen, and we're going to get on with the presentation. So do you think you could share the screen, please, Alessandro? Thank you very much. So what I asked you to do at the very beginning is to design some mood cards so that I could ask you how you feel at certain moments in the class, how you feel after an activity. And maybe rather than picking on the students, I can just tell them to hold up a card. So how am I feeling? Let me find my mood card. That's how I'm feeling. Ooh, I'm confused. Why am I confused? Because there are so many new words in our business. People are telling me about all these different things. There's hybrid learning, there's task-based learning, there's life skills, there's translanguaging, there's diversity, there's equity. I'm confused. And today we're going to be talking about social-emotional learning. What is this? Well, don't worry. I know why I'm confused, but I also know I don't need to worry, because one of my colleagues told me this, that there's actually some good news. The educational authority are telling us your classrooms have to be more this, more this, more this. But actually, Dr. Anne Margaret Smith, who is an educator, and also she advises on students with special learning or specific learning difficulties, she says the good news is, in fact, good practice in teaching is inclusive practice. So all we need to do is just continue being good teachers. So I'm no longer confused. I'm now feeling well. And I want you all, as we go through this session and we look at some of the aspects of social emotional learning, just keep believing in yourselves. If your practice is good, that's enough. So let's go on and let's have a look a little bit about social emotional learning. So for the next 5 or so minutes, can you just sit back and relax and let's look at some history. What we're going to do is begin in the past with the ancient Greeks, and we're going to move right to the future, to now, and to the European Union. So let's go back to this man here. This man is Plato. And all those thousands and thousands of years ago, he talked about sound systems. And what he said about schools is a sound system is a combination of education, which is the academic, but also the upbringing. The upbringing is how we teach our students to be good citizens, how to be polite, how to be sociable, how to be empathetic, etc., etc. So even thousands of years ago, the ancient Greeks recognized that academic is not enough. There's also, we need to help them become, get a good upbringing and become citizens with good character. Now let's jump forward. Let's go to the 20th century and have a look at this man, James Comer. Now he was an American, well he still is, an American educationalist, and he worked in a group of schools in America. And what he noticed, these schools were in rather underdeveloped areas, less privileged, a lot of African American students, and they weren't doing very well. And his belief was if that we help them with their social emotional skills, this would also bring on their academic talents. So he started to introduce a syllabus that looked at social emotional learning, and his research showed that their results actually improved. So while he was working on this and producing results and showing that this was having a benefit, another group of people came along. And this was the collaborative. And this was the Cassell Collaborative, which were academics, but also social and emotional learning. And they argued very much the same. Academic teaching is one thing, but we also need to focus on social and emotional learning. About the same time, there was a seminal book, and you can probably see the book behind me over in that corner. And this was Daniel Goleman, who wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. We're going to have a little bit of a look at what he said in a minute. And then finally, fast forward to now and 2020, and we're back with the European Union. And what they produce is a framework. And in their framework, they talked about key competencies, which include the personal skills, the social skills, and also the learning to learn skills. So as you can see, none of this is new. It all began with the ancient Greeks, but now we're bringing it and we need to bring it and keep it in our classroom. But don't forget, if we believe that our practice is good or our practice is sound, we're probably doing it already. So let's have a look a little bit more at what some of these people said. So let's begin with James Comer. I'm just going to give you a minute to read his quote. And I don't know if you'd agree with me, but what I believe now is there is a lot more frustration. You go out into the street, and even me, where I live in this beautiful, quiet little city, yesterday I noticed two people having an argument because they were walking along the pavement and they banged into each other. And they started being not very polite to each other. It was you, it was you. And they were shouting and people were stopping, and quite a big scene. It just seems that people are getting more frustrated, less patient, less tolerant. And what Comer argued is that maybe today it's not that we need to be more intelligent, What we do need is to be able to tolerate our frustrations more. We need to be more disciplined, more organized, and we need to learn how to manage ourselves. So from that, along comes David Goleman, and he argues, and all of these skills can be taught to children. So what he's saying that even if we're born with a certain intellectual level, if we can teach kids, our children, the other skills, things like how to tolerate our own frustration, this is going to give us a much better chance in life. And finally, the collaborative of academic and social and emotional learning, this is what they said. They said, so what if education fully helped kids in their social, emotional, and academic development? And that's what we're going to argue today. That one thing is teaching them English and the English verbs and the vocabulary and the writing, etc. But if we could also at the same time help them develop their social and emotional skills, we're going to help our kids in their futures and hopefully help these people tolerate frustration easier, manage arguments, so that maybe in the future we won't find people arguing in the street. Who knows? So this organization, CASEL, have also come up with their own framework that looks something like this, where very much the learner is in the middle and there are 5 pieces to the puzzle. And we're going to explore those 5 pieces in a minute. The self-awareness, the self-management, decision-making, relationships, and then also social awareness. And how we're going to do it, we're going to begin with me, then we'll move into the classroom, into the schools, and then finally the family and the community. So let's have a look. So in this webinar, we've begun by looking at social emotional learning. We're now going to look at how we can bring this into the classroom. What strategies and techniques are we going to use? And we're also going to experience some classroom activities, similar to what we've just done with the mood cards. But I think the most important aim, while we're talking about social emotional learning, is that I'm hoping that you're going to leave with some new ideas and also feeling inspired. It's term 3. We've worked incredibly hard. Let's see if we can finish on a high with some new ideas. So how are you feeling now? Hold up your cards. That's great. I can see some wells. That's brilliant. Thank you. Now, if you're confused and wondering how I can see you, if you notice at the top of your computer is a little camera. No, don't worry. I can't see you through your camera. Don't worry. Okay, so let's go on and let's begin. So if you remember, the CASEL, the collaborative, had 5 pies. They argued that there are 5 things we need to focus on. Number 1 is know thyself. This actually comes from ancient Greek, and this is to recognize our own emotions. So how can we do that with our students? And that is as simple as, how are you? How are you feeling? Why are you looking like that? What's up? And this is an example I've taken from Upskill, which is the book behind me, where we look at the emotions. And personally, in my classroom, I introduce these words as they come up, as I see my students experiencing these things. So the students are aware of how they're feeling, but the next stage is, but do they know how to manage that feeling? So it's all very well the student saying, I'm angry, or I'm frustrated. What we now need to do is help them manage that feeling. So you're feeling angry or you're feeling frustrated. What can we do about it? Or what can you do about it? So here is a possible activity. We've got our mood cards, and we could ask the students to get into groups. We could ask them to ask, how do you feel when? And is it a positive or a negative feeling? Okay, I argue that we're still on the awareness level. What we need to do is now move to the management level. So let's have a look at that question. How do you feel when you get a good mark? And let's just change it a little bit. How do you feel when you get a bad mark? So we're going to get some feelings out. So we might get possibly confused, possibly nervous, possibly surprised, possibly frustrated, possibly angry. And I think we also need a second question, which would be, so what do you do about it? And we can get the students to discuss how they manage this feeling. So when I feel frustrated, I talk to a friend. When I feel angry, I go for a walk. When I feel surprised, I speak to the teacher, etc., etc. So just taking a very simple exercise that's in the book already, I'm just going to change it just slightly so that we can now ask the students to manage how they're feeling. So that's 2 of our pies out of the 5. Number 3 is about decision making. And the key word here is responsible. So helping our students make the right decisions. Now, the best way to do that is first by helping them make easy decisions. And in English, we might talk about low stake or high stake. So a high stake decision is something that's very, very important for my life. So, for example, a high stake decision might be deciding which university to go to. A low stake decision might be, well, shall I watch this program or this program? And what I suggest in the classroom is we begin with low stake decisions, but we slowly make them a little bit more, move them up a little bit. And so we're going to give our students a little bit of a choice. But notice I've made a note to myself. If we're going to give our students a choice, don't forget to ask them to reflect on their choice and think about, is it a good decision or was it a bad decision? So we're now in term 3. I believe you've got 3 or 4 more weeks of teaching, of classes, and you're now going to need to do some revision with your students. Your students are going to have to revise what they've been learning, and I presume they're going to have some kind of evaluation or test or something. So what we could do is we can open the book, and this is taken from Upskill, and we can just give them the review section from the book. Well, we could, or we could give our students a choice. And we could say, okay, here's the double page. These are nice exercises. This is going to help you review what we've just done, but I'm going to give you a choice. And you're going to have a choice of 3 things. Number 1 is going to be the challenge. How easy or how difficult? By that I mean you can choose which exercises you do, how many exercises you do, whether you can look at your notes, whether you don't look at your notes, you can choose the challenge. The second consideration will be the support. How much support do you need? Would you like to work on your own? Would you like to work with a partner? Would you like your partner to be somebody of a similar ability? Or maybe you'd like to work with a mentor, with a much stronger student? You decide, you make that choice. Maybe you'd like some help from me. Maybe you'd like to see the answers first. I don't know. You decide how much support. My final consideration for my students will be the time. The first time will be, would you like to do it in class or out of class at home? Would you like to do it in 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour? You decide, you choose. Okay? So that's one thing we could do. We can have the same exercise, but we can ask the students to think about the 3 considerations. Just to repeat them again, it would be the challenge, the support, and also the time. But there is another way of doing it, and this is what I would call a choice board. And this is my English choice board for revision. What I would say to the students is get into groups and choose one or two or three of these things to revise. It's your choice. I'll just let you have a quick look at them, and then there are a couple that I'll explain in case you don't understand. Okay, so I think most of them are very, very obvious. We could ask them to design a game or make a crossword, or they could test each other in pairs by reading out questions and answer. They could just do the review section. They could write a conversation for a speaking activity, but possibly this one, you create a cheat sheet for the test. Well, what this is how many times have you, and this happens in Spain, maybe the Italians never, never, never cheat in exams. But here you go. I went into my class and one of the students had this. And what the student had done, he had or she had written all the answers on a little piece of paper like this. And they had rolled it up and they had put it inside their pen. So that's what I mean about a cheat sheet. So I might say to the students, well, actually, if you're going to create a cheat sheet, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it well? And that's what you can do. Create a cheat sheet for the test. And then finally, in the middle, I've got a section that's called free choice. That means that the students might have another idea. They might say, well, actually, I prefer to revise like this. But notice I've put, but check with the teacher first. Because one of them might say, well, how I like to revise is I like to get on my phone and chat with my friends. I'm not very sure how you're going to revise that way. So I would get them to check with you first for the free choice. So this is what would be the English choice board and for revision. But if you remember, when we talked about decision making, it's all very well making the decision, but we also need to ask our students to check on the decision. So what I do next, we've done the revision, we do the test or the evaluation exercise, and then I say, okay, think about the decisions you made, and I would like you to rate it. How do you feel about the choices you made today? And we could even have this as a poster on the classroom wall, and they just go up and they put their names next to how they feel. There is something missing, though. What do you think's missing from this? So somebody says, I feel I made a bad choice. My next question would be, why? Tell me why. So it's all very well asking the question, but also get them to say, well, why do you feel like that? And what might you do differently next time? So that's one way. The second way is the exit slip. And this is called the 3, 2, 1 that you might have seen for other activities. And on this piece of paper, I want my students to write down 3 decisions they made today, or made this week, or made this term. 2 decisions that they feel happy about and why. And 1 decision that they would like to reconsider and why. And the final reflection idea is a tweet from Twitter. So what we're going to do is just ask them to write a really short message for Twitter or social media where they write about their choices. So they would write something like, today I decided to play a game with my friends to revise. I'm happy that I decided to do that because it was fun and I've learned a lot, or similar. So number 3, we've been talking about getting our students to make responsible decisions, but don't forget to ask them to reflect. So far, it's very much been me, me, me. We started by how do I feel? How do I manage my feelings? Making my own decisions. Let's move on to number 4. And now we're beginning to make relationships. So we're going to begin to work with other people. So what I'd like you to do now is think about yourself and think about this year, this academic year. It's now April 2023. We're very near the end of our academic year. I'd like you now to think about, how do you feel now? Has it been a good year? Do you feel it's been a success? Do you feel relieved? What difficulties have you had? How have you managed those difficulties? Now let's go back to September 2022. The first day when your head teacher gave you your timetable and you looked at your groups, how did you feel? Oh no, I've got class 3C and I've heard so much? Or did you think, yes, great timetable, great groups, this is going to be a great year? What were your worries about this year? Oh no, I've got a year 3, this means I'm going to. Or, oh great, I've got a year 3, this means I'm going to. And what advice do you wish somebody had told you? So imagine that you today could go back to September 2022 and talk to yourself. What advice would you give yourself? For example, I would tell myself, Emma, don't worry. COVID was controlled. There wasn't another lockdown. You were able to go to class every day. Don't worry, everything was fine. So that's one thing I would now go back and tell myself. Because in September, I was thinking, oh no, if I'm locked down with group 3C, this is going to be difficult. So this is in fact something you could do with your students. You could get your students to think about, how do you feel now? How did you feel last September 2022? Were you thinking, oh, this is an important year. At the end of this year, I have to decide which high school I'm going to go to? Or were you thinking, oh, this is a new school. Oh no, I don't know how I'm going to cope. Or were you thinking, oh no, this is year 2. What were you thinking? And what advice do you wish you could give yourself now? And this is for your students. And with these thoughts, I would ask my students to now write a letter to the next year. And this is what the letter would look like. Hi, next year's class. How are you? Well, I hope you're going to have an amazing year. Now, notice I keep it really positive, and I tell my students, make your letter positive. You don't want to say you're going to have a terrible year, because everybody will run out of school and never come back. So tell them they need to put words like amazing, fantastic, wonderful. And then we look at some of these sentences together. So don't worry if you feel nervous, confused, afraid, worried at first. That's normal. This year, you'll learn how to talk about yourself, how to write an essay, how to listen to podcasts, how to whatever. I promise you'll do well in the exams or whatever. My advice is to work hard, study a little bit every week, enjoy yourself, relax, stay calm. And the last one, please don't worry, please don't be afraid, please don't panic. It'll be awesome. Have fun. So what I do next is ask my students to copy and complete the letter. I would then collect in the letters, and in September, I would show them to the new class, and I would let the new class read them. Ideally, what I would love to do is to invite the students who wrote the letters to come into the class and speak to the new students. But that's not always possible or feasible, but we can use the letters. And if you're wondering, where did I get the letter from? I created it in Canva. So if you use the application Canva, you can create a letter like this for your students to fill in. So what we've done here is we've asked the students to think about other people, not just your feelings and how you manage your own feelings, but how you're going to help other people with their feelings and how they're going to manage their feelings. So that was number 4. Let's move on to number 5. Number 5 is we're stepping a little more out of ourselves, and we're just going to look at a quote from one of my favorite books, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I wonder if you've read this book. It's set in America. It's a white judge whose wife died, and he was bringing up 2 young children. And he defended a black man who was accused of murdering somebody. And this is what he says to his daughter, Scout. I'll just let you read it. So what he's saying is, in order to understand anybody, you need to empathize. So social awareness is learning about empathy, how to get on with people, how to understand how other people are feeling. Very, very similar to relationship skills, but in order to build a relationship, we do need empathy. So let's have a look at some examples of how we could help our students here. So again, here's a photograph from Upskill. Here are 2 young women, Maria and Lucy. I'm just going to give you 20 seconds to imagine what you think they're like. What do you think they're like as how old are they? Where do they live? What school do they go to? Are they good students? Bad students? What makes you think that? What about personalities? Do you think they're very, very similar in personality or different? And what do you think their relationship is? How do they know each other? Do they get on? Do they spend time together? What do you think? Great. I can see your heads and your brains whirring around thinking about things. Okay, so what we're going to do next is look at some sentences. This is all taken from a listening. We don't actually have time to listen to the recording, but if you're interested, it is in Upskill. So what I would do next, now we've looked at the photograph with the students and the students have thought about Maria and Lucy, I would then show them some sentences and together we'd talk about if they thought they were true or false. So here's number 1. Do you think it's true or false? If you think it's true, put your hands up like that. If you think it's false, put your hands like that. Well done. You're all doing like that. It's true. Here's the next one. True or false? True or false? Yes. Some of you didn't get this one. Yes, twins sometimes look different. This is true. What about the next one? True or false? Brilliant. It's true. In English, we call them identical when they look exactly the same and non-identical when they look different. There are 2 types of twin, but the word is the same in English. It's twin. I know in Spanish we have 2 different words, and probably in Italian it's the same. There are 2 different words. In English, we say identical twin or non-identical twin. What about the next one? Is it true or false? Brilliant. Well done. It's true. If twins can be 2 boys, 2 girls, or a boy or a girl. If they are a boy and a girl, they are non-identical, obviously, because they won't look the same. So we've got all this information and we know which is true and which is false. We know that twins are born at the same time. We know that twins can look different. We know there are two types, and we know there can be two boys, two girls, or a boy and a girl. So imagine we put this information into a computer and we gave the computer this information: Maria and Lucy are twins. What would the computer say? Would they say this information could be true, or would they say it's false? And we'd now have a discussion with the students. And obviously, with the information we've got here, they could be twins, because we know that twins can look different. We know they can be non-identical, and we know twins can be two girls. And what I would do next is play the recording. So we play the recording, and what you find out on the recording is that Maria and Lucy are twins. Their dad was an American, a white American, and Lucy's mum was from the Caribbean, and they are twins. So I was talking about social awareness, and what we do next is get the students to think a little bit about being a twin. And what I want them to do is think about, do you know any twins? What do you think? How do you think what do you think it's like to be a twin? What do you think it's like to be identical or non-identical? And then I'd ask them to analyze things. So what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of being a twin? Why? And finally, evaluate. What do you think's stronger? Are there more advantages or more disadvantages? And I'd probably also get the students to think about Maria and Lucy. What do you think are the advantages for Maria and Lucy? What are the disadvantages? And do you think it ever causes any kind of problem for Maria and Lucy? And I'd get the students to think about it and to discuss it. And like this way, I've asked them to actually step inside Maria and Lucy's shoes. That's one way about doing it. The other way I get my students to empathize is this. And these are called Shout Out Fridays. I'm thirsty. I'm just going to have a sip of water. And on a Shout Out Friday, sorry, I'd say to my students, so who would you like to give a shout out to? A shout out is, hooray, yippee, you've done great. And the way I do this, I begin this, is by telling a story. So this is actually a true story about a friend of mine. Here's my story. So my friend Emily is a teacher. She works in Glasgow. This week in the UK, in the United Kingdom, there's an important conference in Harrogate. Emily wanted to go to the conference, but she was thinking, how am I going to get to the conference? Suddenly, she had an idea. I know what. I'm going to cycle to the conference. I'm going to go on my bicycle, and in that way, I can collect money for a charity. But what did her friends say? All her friends said, no way, no way, you can't do that, Emily. And Emily said, yes, I can. So Emily got on her bike. Now, for those of you who know Glasgow and those of you who know Harrogate, there are mountains in between. And Emily had to climb about 6,000 meters up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. And did she do it? Yes, she did. And here she is. 400 kilometers later, she made it to Harrogate. And here are all her friends celebrating. So who would you like to give a shout out to? My shout out goes to Emily Bryson. So what I'd do next is ask the students to think about someone they would like to give a shout out to. It doesn't need to be anyone very famous. It doesn't even need to be an Emily. It could be to a friend. It could be to a member of their family, just something that they've done or they usually do. And then I would ask them to draw a little story. And then in groups, they would tell their story and they would give the shout out to that person. So that's my number 5. We've come to the end. I've done my 5 pieces of my pie. And what does this mean? Do you think you should put your hand in the toaster? No, that's not a good idea. What we're looking for is common sense. So at the very beginning of this session, I said, I'm confused. There's so much we're meant to be doing in the classroom. But actually, as you've just seen, it's all common sense. I think if you are aware of your own students, all of these things we can introduce into our own classroom and very, very easily. So this symbol means don't get burnt. It's all common sense. So bear in mind the Cassell framework, bear in mind the 5 pieces and the pie of the pie. And this quote is saying, don't forget to educate both the head and the heart. And funnily enough, if we go back to the ancient Greeks, this is what Aristotle said. So we're doing the head and also the heart. So thank you ever so much for listening to me today. We're just about at the end. I do have some references if you'd like to read a little bit more about the topic. And if not, thank you very much. I'm going to leave the presentation and come back online. And I wonder whether Romina has any questions for me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Emma. It was extremely interesting. Really, really interesting. I would like to ask everyone, if you have questions, this is the moment. So please use the YouTube chat to ask your questions to Emma. We have more or less 10 minutes. But while we wait for the questions, I would like to ask you actually a personal question about social emotional learning, because while you were talking, I really got the feeling that you like the topic. So I was about to ask you, do you like teaching social emotional learning, and what is it that you like when you teach this kind of topic?
It's an interesting word you used. You used the word teaching. And I wonder whether we can actually teach it or help develop it. Maybe that's a better word, or
Absolutely.
encourage it. Because if I go into the classroom, teaching to me sounds like, okay, today we're going to do social emotional learning, da da da, and it kind of lecture. But do I like encouraging it? Yes. And in the classroom, I'm known for saying things like, be nice to each other, be kind. Or if I see that the students are getting very, very nervous, keep calm. What are we doing? We're all learning. It doesn't matter. Mistakes are good. And to my mind, that's all social emotional learning. It's all
Absolutely.
helping them manage. And then when I see, especially, when the students begin to get frustrated with each other, maybe in pair work, it's not working. And you can
Mm-hmm.
see them, oh, but he's not doing it properly. Or, okay, just let's keep calm. Let's think about what you're doing. Let's think about how to make it better. Definitely.
Absolutely. And during the talk, I was having a look at the chat, and there was a nice comment, I would say, when you were talking about the fact that the students should become a little bit more. We should help the students become responsible, so through the critical thinking activities. And there were comments about how sometimes it's difficult to, let's say, trust our students. So do you have maybe any advice for our teachers that are about to end the academic year in related to this?
Yeah. So my idea was kind of connected to revision. And I also mentioned this idea of low stakes and high stakes. I think at the beginning of the year, get them to be responsible, but maybe keep it fairly low stakes, meaning that if they make the wrong decision, it doesn't really matter. But as we go up the scale and the decision becomes more important, so say, for example, we're talking about the third year of middle school and they're having to make a choice about their high school, that's high stakes. So at that stage, I would then get them to think about how they're feeling, thinking about their emotions, think about the options, write the options down. How do you feel? How do you feel when you say you're going to do science? Do you feel so kind of just being there all the time? When they make a decision, getting them to reflect on it. And then
Mhm.
finally, if they make the wrong decision, being there to to support them. Because I think that's the worst moment at the end when if you make a wrong decision,
Absolutely.
you need that help then. And I don't know what happens then. You know, I'm in my new school and I realize I've made the wrong decision. Can I change schools? Presumably I can. Presumably it's not the end of the world. Presumably. So just kind of don't worry. We're going to try and make the right decision. But in the end, if we make a wrong choice, I went to university and I did this degree. After 3 months, I realized I didn't like it. I went to see my tutor and it was fine. We just convalidated some subjects. I changed and it was fine. So, don't worry.
Exactly. I totally agree. There's someone, Barbara, saying, just commenting about empathy,
Mm,
another extremely important feeling and topic, in my opinion. So she's saying that just last week they talked about empathy in a class, and she thinks it's really important, and she feels good when she tries to help them feel better. So
mm,
actually, I think uh, it's a nice idea because we help them, but
mm.
they really help us. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like a
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
mutual. What do you
I,
think?
yeah, I'm going to tell you a story, in fact. Well, it's not a story, something that happened to me last week. I met my neighbor, and my neighbor works with older people who have had addiction problems. And he was giving them a talk on social emotional skills. And he was saying to me that what they've noticed is one of the biggest problems today is the workplace and the fact that we don't get on so well with our colleagues, and the fact that we don't understand our colleagues, that we don't listen to our colleagues anymore, that we're not active listeners, that we don't
Hmm.
empathize. So somebody, for example, misses work, maybe because they're not feeling well. And instead of saying to the person, I'm sorry, are you okay? Can I help you? We kind of say, oh, they're off work again today and what it means to me. And I've got to do this and this and this. And I think a lot of stuff in there is empathy, that I think we have to go back and learn to be empathetic with our co-workers, and maybe we have to start in the classroom and with our own classmates. And maybe the reason why one of our students is behaving this way is because he's having a bad day or he doesn't feel good or whatever.
Absolutely. And do you think that after COVID, social emotional learning has become a little bit, let's say, on the spotlight or in the spotlight, or do you think that it was already meant to be? Let's say it was just a part of a process.
Yeah, I mean, I think it did begin before. Definitely, people were talking about it before, because I mean, the Goleman book was written in 1995, Emotional Intelligence. So that was going on. And we know that Aristotle and Plato were talking about it as well. But the thing about COVID was, suddenly we were having to make relationships at a distance and we weren't. I think there's something about being in the room with somebody. There's that kind of, you can feel people. And I think we lost
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. And I think coming back face to face, I think that's where that's all coming from. And we're much more concerned about well-being now, how people are feeling, how we can help each other. So I think COVID has kind of accelerated it.
Okay.
As
One
long
of
as it's,
the, let's
yeah.
say, positive
Yes,
aspects of it,
yes,
maybe,
yes,
if we can say that. Okay,
absolutely.
I don't know if maybe anyone has some questions or any questions for Emma. Otherwise, I'll just wrap up. Just to thank you again, everybody, for today. Thank you, Emma. It was a
You're welcome.
fantastic session as usual. And I just would like to remind you that you will find your attestati on www.mondadorieducation.it/attestati. And if everyone, okay, I'm saying lots of thank you for everything. So I'll say goodbye now, and I'll say goodbye to Emma and to everyone. So thank you. If you have questions about the materials or the books, I'm always available, and you can contact me through your agents in the school. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good day, have a good evening, and see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.